Nocturne by Tales from Nocturne 2017. Welcome back to Hybrid Theory. I'm Aurian Archive, and we're picking up on Carnage, Part 4. We're starting off with a retake of a previous picture of the kind of workbench corner setup with uh, both the Silverstone SG-10 and the Nanoxia Deep Silence. Uh, and kind of what's going on, you may notice if you're looking at the details for the stream, I did remember to put some links in there. And what I really wanted to do was kind of go over some of the questions and answers that have been popping back and forth on Discord. And from external conversations, as it may be called. And we'll start with kind of the obvious question from previous Carnages. I have in hand right now two socket AM4 motherboards that are not being used. I have a B450 from Gigabyte, their Aorus B450 something, and I have the B550P. Now, the B450 was the motherboard I was using and ticked off Southern Sledgehammer. And to be honest, I really don't trust that motherboard anymore because it was going when the power supply failed. So although the motherboard has been working uh, on a different power supply, I don't trust it for day-to-day usage or long-term usage. But it's still a functional motherboard. I don't have an explicit reason to throw it away. There's nothing I can determine that's wrong with it, even though I don't trust it. Well, the B550, instead of returning it, I decided to go ahead and keep it because don't trust the B450 anymore. And I do trust the B550. It is brand new, and kind of my long term goal is assuming for the moment that for the Ryzen's 6000 series or a 7000 series, depending on however AMD brands it. If they stick with socket AM4, I can either on the X57S, I can jump up to a Ryzen 6000 series, or if we actually move to a new socket for DDR5 memory, say socket AM5, I can maybe pick up a socket AM4 Ryzen 5000 series for maybe not much money. Uh, so keeping that in mind, I didn't want to send the B550 back either because, well, the motherboard behind them has the one in the Noxia case, coming back here. That would be the one with the blue fan in the back. That's a Ryzen 1800X. Now, Ryzen 1800 first generation Ryzens are no longer supported on B550 or higher motherboards. X57 and B550 was the last time that those processors they weren't supported anymore. B450 was their stopping point. And that's the other reason why I hung on to the uh, B450 Auros, and that if something goes wrong with the media server right now, something more than what I've already done to it, I have a motherboard on hand that I can put that Ryzen 1800X in and keep working, or at least keep it lose less. And so the question was raised, why don't, because I have an operational GeForce 1660 Super TI something. I forget what its actual designation is. I have one of those. Why don't, and I need a graphics card to get the Intel system back up and working. So why don't I buy a Ryzen 5 5600G processor, put that in the media server, move the 1660 to the Intel system, and now I've got a graphics card in there. I've got a graphics on my media server. I've now got all systems potentially up and working. Well, there's kind of a reason why I am not looking forward, or there is a reason I dismissed that. And it really uh, I'm going to reference a website here and turn you on. And, and give me a second. Let's bring you up to the top. Okay, the Steam Deck gaming benchmarks just leaked. I mean, the developers finally got their hands on Steam Deck development kits, and the benchmarks are finally being set. And here's the big problem with the Ryzen 5600 G processor. We'll do interact, and we'll do see full specifications. And it's, let's see, this doesn't actually give us here. It just says integrated Radeon graphics. Doesn't actually tell us much about what the graphics are. So we kind of have to go looking that up. And over here in AMD system, you find that what it comes down to, these Ryzen 5000 series are using Vega graphics. Now, what a lot of people really don't understand here is the exact timing. And we're going to go back to the, and forgive me for a second, as this is about to be, there we go. And I realized the colors are off. Uh, and that's because, again, I'm working on a platform that supports HDR, and while Open Broadcast System does fairly decent on color transition on integrated browser, if you're not using the integrated browser and you're using an external browser, the color is off. And what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for the first Vegas, and we're actually looking for when Vega was first announced. And if we're kind of scrolling down the list, there's our first. We have Fury, we have Nano, we have Fury X, we have Pro Duo, and there is Vega 56. Now, we see Vega 56 was in 2017. 2017. Okay. When was RDNA announced? I mean, off the top of your head. And RDNA, the first RDNA, wasn't until a couple years after, and here we are, RDNA microarchitecture. And RDNA was first released in July 7, 2019. This was after Vega was already on the market. And the other thing that we really want to look at is we're going back several years here, is we're looking at the Bulldozer microarchitecture. Now, Bulldozer was created in 2011. Vega, the Vega architecture, as we go all the way back to this page, scroll all the way back down to Vega. And we look here, the R9290X, the last of the Southern Islands, the Hawaii XT. These were basically refreshed, die shrunk, and kept unchanged from about 2012 onwards. So Vega's development really didn't start in 2016 or 2017. It didn't start in 2016. Vega was actually starting after the launch of the Fury X and the Fiji processors, the Radeon Pro Duo, the Radeon R9 Fury, the Radeon R9 Nano. That was the last flagship high-end from the Southern Island series, and that was in 2015. So that's the date that we're looking at for when Vega started. Vega started in 2015, and what else are we looking at? what other kind of information are we looking for? Well, actually, we'll do AMD Richland. And here we go, the AMD Richland Core, the AMD Accelerated Processing Unit. And here we have the various versions of the AMD APUs over the years. And what we're looking at for 2015. 2015 would have been Carrizo, and 2014 was Kaveri. So here's what's keeping in mind is that when Kaveri came out the final year that uh, Southern Islands was being kind of written off the stage. And Kaveri was kind of the last processor to really be developed, or at least APU to be developed with the previous architectural in mind. From Kaveri onwards, we started with Carrizo, with Cavalry, with Bristol Ridge, Stony Ridge, Raven Ridge, Picasso, Renoir, Cezanne, or actually going up to Renoir. Cezanne is where things actually got interesting again. But as we look through these and we look through the history and the releases of them, and we may have the information that we're actually looking for, the uh, GPU saving. Uh, the thing is, all of these, when keeping in mind back, and we're really looking at Kaveri, and Kaveri was the steamroller, 2 to 4 cores, graphic core next. And then we kind of had graphic core next. And one other thing, keeping in mind with these APUs, and I had one, is that Bulldozer itself, the Bulldozer microarchitecture, was designed to be very powerful in integer operations. And the intent on AMD's part was for the graphic processor, the big floating point processor included with the APU, would be used to handle floating point operations. And this goes into coming back where we're looking at here, where we're looking at 2015 to transfer over to Vega. Vega was not designed to be a high performance graphics chip. No, I'm not joking. Vega was not designed to be a high performance graphics chip. Vega was designed to be a high performance computing chip. And there is a massive difference between the two aspects of technology creation. And almost a gap so big you almost can't get around it, over it, or beyond it, or beside it. Is Vega was not created to be for graphics. Vega was created to be for compute. And AMD's envisioning at the time of Vega's creation is, keep in mind, in 2014, 2015, OpenCL wasn't really a thing. We can actually go look that up, OpenCL. And the OpenCL, and we can look here, we'll go to Wikipedia, and initial release was in 2009. Okay, but when? Okay, that's how long OpenCL have been around. That's how long an open version of GPU, general purpose, general own graphic processing units have been around. What about Vulkan? The Vulkan API, 2016. And here's the key part. AMD, with going back to these accelerated processors, going all the way back and looking down this list, Richland, Weatherford, Trinity, Honda, Yano, Zacate, Ontario, Desna, Fusion. From 2011 onwards, AMD was already trying to stuff GPGPU as the floating point performance answer in their desktop processors. And if you had software that could leverage GPGPU through OpenCL on AMD APUs, you could get better performance than an equivalent Intel processor for the same amount of cores, or equivalent graphics performance if you had a discrete graphic card, because you could take the floating point operations that the Bulldozer processors were not strong at, and you could just run them on the graphics processor, which was incredibly strong at those kinds of operations. And that's where we got to Vega. Vega was designed to be a compute platform first. It was designed to work with HBM, high bandwidth memory. It was this bespoke design that was only kind of, it could do gaming, but it wasn't optimized for gaming. And that's kind of the key problem that I have using, and why I keep saying over and over, time after time, Vega was a terrible architecture. Because Vega was designed to be the floating point processor for AMD's, they described a heterogeneous computing environment, where they were talking about Terenza, they were talking about systems with both power and x86 and GPU all in the same system, the IBM Roadrunner platform with Opteron. You had all these different ventures to bring compute beyond just as a gaming, outside of floating point compute, outside of massive potential in its gaming graphic capability. But that's also been a massive stumbling block for almost all of the AMD APUs, because Vega was never designed to be used with standard memory formats. It was not designed to be used with DDR. It was not designed to be used with low power DDR. It was designed with a bespoke, specific, developed by AMD in conjunction with JDEC, a memory form, the HBM memory format, high bandwidth memory. So keeping that in mind, that Vega was basically designed to use a specific memory format, we have both why the first Vega graphic processors and APUs sucked so much, and why AMD has kept being able to drive massive gains in performances out of those APUs. And the simple answer is, with each generation, AMD has gotten better at making Vega work with a standard memory system, or a memory system that is not bespoke to a specific set or suite of applications, specifically GPU. Now, that's just my theory. I don't actually have access to AMD's internal documentation, but that's why I'm not interested in just grabbing a Ryzen 5 5600G and throwing that in a media server, taking the graphic card in the media server, and putting it in the Intel system, and off we go, because I've already got a Ryzen 3200U with a Vega graphic processor. I tried to do the streaming setup from that laptop, and as some of the previous streams have showed, it's not really up to the task. It isn't. And Vega, again, terrible architecture. I'm not really interested in buying another Vega. Now, if AMD was still stuffing Vega into processors because it's the best floating point compute architecture they had to pair into their to pair with their central processors, may look the other way. But the uh, we come back to this page, interact, and let's get rid of that pop up. We come back to here, and we have these. Well, let's get rid of that page too, so it shows up. We have the fact that the uh, Steam Deck shows off the actual power of RDNA 2 in a system format. This also ties into AMD focusing on laptops, or actually, I think the title was uh, AMD's focusing on tablets, hybrids, and putting desktop processors as second place. And the Steam Deck is an excellent example of why AMD is going this route. AMD can make very bespoke, semi-custom computing platforms that are very competitive in price per performance, extra competitive in price per performance, and they can work more closely with vendors, and they can kind of shy away from dealing with hostile vendors. And that's kind of one of the problems, to dive off here and talk about Intel's Alchemy, their uh, their upcoming Arc GPU lineup. Intel has effectively announced that they are working with three other mainboard manufacturers to produce. Intel announces uh, graphic card partners. And the actual story, I think, was we'll head back to the browser to go over this. Okay. And let's see if we've actually got a listing of who's making these. Uh, it's gone out to uh, partners. I'm not really sure. Uh, okay, I'm not seeing a quick listing of who's actually making the ARC GPUs. But one of the big things I want to talk about later is supply, actually getting cards into the hands of actual users. And that's one of the big things with the Steam Deck is the way the Steam Deck is being constructed, the way it's being sold. It's getting devices straight into the hands of users, not letting devices just get hijacked and sent elsewhere. And that's kind of the performance of it. I've already got a pre-order on one. When it comes down to, I've already got, and we'll come back to this picture. I've already got an 1800X that's working. I've already got aside from my screw-ups with the drives, I've got a working media server. And I really just want to get the Intel system working again because it's an engineering sample. Intel trusted me to do something unique with it, and I'm not ever really sure I delivered on doing something unique with the processor that they gave me. Uh, I never did break any OC benchmarks. I never did anything. It's I from my perspective, I let Intel down. I didn't give them anything that they could ever, uh, what would become social media is like, can you believe what he managed to do with that? No, I didn't ever do that with the engineering sample that I was given. So part of me kind of, I want to keep this system going because at least then I have something, I can look at Intel PR department and go, yeah, it's still running. I made a made a crappy choice on the motherboard because I wanted to get the first micro ATX motherboard with Crossfire support, and I did, and that was not a good move. At least not a good long-term move. So I hope that kind of. I realize I just bounced all over the place here, but I hope that kind of answers the a question as to why don't I just go get an AMD APU, stuff it in the media server, swap out motherboard, stuff it in the media server, transfer the NVIDIA graphics card over, and just roll from there. Is don't really want to do that. I don't want to buy a processor where I already know that the graphics are underperforming. And let let's be honest here for a minute. In Vega should not have been in any APUs in the Zen generation. RDNA or something based on Polaris should have been the graphics processor core that AMD used. And the reason why they used Vega is that Vega was their best compute platform. And if you're trying to address a specific segment, you go with your best answer for that segment. And for AMD, Vega was the best compute answer. Very good at compute. Polaris wasn't very good at compute. All right. So, kind of going on there. Uh, any other reason for the links in the bottom? Why I didn't take one path. I kind of did want to go over things that I may need or things that I am looking at in order to finish putting the Carnage systems back together. So I've basically made two lists on Amazon and Newegg, and I've put uh, the kind of fans that I need, the kind of power supply that I would like to have, and I've also found on Amazon the triple channel Nemix RAM, so I put that on there as well. And I also made as an identical list as I could over on Newegg. And okay, same thing here. I'm not sure why. Sometimes OBS likes to scroll and sometimes it doesn't like to scroll, but you can see there's supposed to be 8 items on here, and I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure how to get the OBS browser interaction to scroll properly. That seems to be a recurring issue. And while I was also here kind of talking about things that I needed to put the back together, and we'll focus on the Amazon list because at least I can see all the items on the Amazon list. I have in here starting from the top, I've got the Be Quiet Silent Wings 140 millimeter, have a Be Quiet Dark Power 850. We've got Silent Wings 120 millimeter. I have, for some reason, the Pure Wings okay, these are the 80 millimeters. Silent Wings apparently is not available in an 80 millimeter package. I have the Noctua Slim, what was this? 120 millimeter. I think I needed a Slim 140 millimeter as well. Uh, so while I'm thinking about it, Noctua Slim 140 and okay, yep, there's the Amazon, and we'll add it to archive. And we'll do the same thing for Newegg. Noctua Slim 140 millimeter. All right. Oh, it's not available on uh, Newegg in a 140 millimeter. Okay, well, that's good to know. So that would be one reason. Let's do. All right, there it's now been added. There's the 140 millimeter. Not sure that's the slim. Go back and check that. Well, that's quiet. 120 at 15 millimeter, 120 at 15 millimeter, 92 x 14 millimeter. Okay, I'm not sure that's the slim, but I think I could also use the 92 millimeter slim, so we'll add that to the archive list as well. Okay. And okay, so there's the Noctua fans, the Be Quiet fans, Be Quiet power supply. Okay, I'm not exactly tied to the Be Quiet power supply. I really like Be Quiet products so far. I mean, previously in the past, I've used Corsair, Seasonic. I know makes some good power supplies, so I'm not picky. If someone offers me a power supply, it's a certain amount of wattage, at least 750. I think I've really come to prefer. Well, to go back to this picture for a moment. In the Silverstone, fully modular is pretty much the only way to make this work. A partial modular cabling system is a real big pain, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I stopped using Um, the Apivias cases, if you were using a power supply with a hard cable attached, actually getting it in and wiring it could be a little bit of a problem. So, fully modular is really the easiest thing to work with. So, I'm not really hung up on um, I'm not really hung up on the brand of power supply as long as it, Gold Plus, Titanium Plus. The Be Quiet is titanium efficiency, and well, if you're running it for long periods or have to put it on power safe mode or clocking things down, a more efficient power supply generally handles that a little better. Uh, okay, and one other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about here, because uh, oh, drop SDAC. Okay, because this was kind of a question made in passing. Uh, And I wanted to come back to it. And we'll do a quick browser window to bring this up. And that is the Mastrop O2 plus SDAC DAC amp. Now, occasionally, Drop runs another production run on these. And I have been asked before, why don't I just, I love these. I have one of these. Why don't I just get another one of these? And, well, the back picture kind of answers this question. The Mastrop Grace Design SDAC plus O2 or O2 plus SDAC still requires an external 12-volt interface. And this is one of those where if I have to explain why this is something that annoys the living daylights out of me, okay, part of me, I do get it. Because you can use the Mastrop O2 SDAC without a computer. If you're amplifying, if you're just using the O2 amplifier, you do want an external power supply. So on one hand, I'm not really opposed to having an external and a 12-volt input. I'm really not. What I am kind of annoyed at, and we'll just bring the web page up. And here's what I'm annoyed at. Whoa. Okay, I need a different build back page for. All right, let's just turn all of that off. Okay. And this is another problem with OBS is that it doesn't always parse background on web page delivery as you kind of think it might. USB uh, now USB has constantly been adding power delivery. And if you're using a 12-volt power supply, or to take this off and come back to the SDAC, if you're using a 12-volt DCN, you can get the same kind of power out of a USB port with power delivery. So why not go back and simplify this? Take the 12-volt input out, just run a USB Type-C with power delivery, and ship it with a USB-C device that's capable of passing enough power to drive the components, and then users only have to worry about one cable if they're hooking it up to a computer. Now, okay, you may have a fair claim here that if you're hooking it up to a laptop or a phone, you may not necessarily have enough power to just drive it over the USB port. And okay, that is an issue. However, I've also seen a number of USB double cables. As much as I pick on its lack of Linux support, the EVGA XR1 video capture device ships with a USB connector that includes an USB power delivery addition. You don't have enough power, you plug up an additional USB power supply, and away you go. You hook it up right, and you still only have to worry about one cable for power delivery and maybe even connection going to whatever you're trying to connect it to. It's really not that big a deal. It's putting in a DC 12 volt that goes straight to power. Uh, it goes to its own separate wall outlet with its own separate inverter, and all of that electronic gear is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Annoying. It Let's see if we can actually get a look at the plug. No, we don't have a clear shot of the actual electrical plug. But trying to find space for it and working with it is just, there's better ways to handle this. And not having updated the O2 SDAC be, to use a USB power supply, to use power delivery over USB Type C, it's kind of tacky. And it's the one reason why I wouldn't buy another one. And this is kind of where we, start adding insult to injury. When you look at devices that support amplification using a USB Type C port, or begin with the idea that you are going to be using a USB-C class connection, and Lightning, Apple's Lightning is predicated on USB Type C, so the power delivery is pretty much within the same class range. So if you're using that kind of knowing you're going to have that much, this ICO Zerta ITM01 has a decoding rate 32-bit at 384 kilohertz PCM, and it does do DSD at 128, and it's only a $50 part. This is again is another reason why I find the Grace Mastrop Grace SDAC plus O2 kind of a hard sell at this point. Is It's really showing how far the audio industry has quickly come using USB Type C as the basis for expected power delivery. And that's kind of a big problem with a lot of devices. Now, do I want one of these ICOs? Yeah, I'm really kind of interested in how it sounds. Because as an audiophile, something you're always concerned about is transparency. How much of the audio signal is being amplified, and how much background electronic noise is the amplifier adding. One of the things the SDAC is very, very good at with the O2 amplifier is it's a very transparent, very much so. If we do the whole scrolling down through the line values here and looking at its comparative performance, it's really offering an astounding level of transparency for its, well, in this case, there's no price because they're sold out, but it offers an astounding amount of performance per price. It's not quite the most transparent amplifier I've ever listened to, but it's definitely in one of the, I don't want to do this whole price for value, but it is great. It is great value for money when it's on sale. It's just showing its age and connectivity. Uh, Now, going back to looking at ICO for a second, it does offer a higher amount of decoding performance compared to the SDAC's capabilities. And the SDAC tops out at 192 24-bit. But there is a question to be asked as to how much are you losing, or how much are you not getting, in terms of what's not being, or what's being added to the audio stream. Sorry, I don't want to break out the impress file and press boxes to start to explain audio transparency, but I really, and this is one thing that really liked the Zorlu that I had because it was, for its price and performance, a very transparent. Yes, if you were deliberately listening for additional noise, you could find it, but you did kind of have to go looking for it if you were using sources that you knew were clean to begin with. And, well, that's kind of true of all audio. If you know your audio is clean, then you're more able to easily detect discrepancies. If your audio is not very clean, well, you may never notice, and that's kind of a shot at YouTube. You're listening to YouTube music, you already know the audio source is not a clean source to begin with, so you're not expecting clean audio. You're just expecting good enough audio to not go, "Ooh, that sounds wrong." Okay, and I really think that's all I had to this. I think I've answered the question on why I don't just go grab an APU and run that route. I've gone through, I think, reiterating from previous Carnages what I kind of need. I still need a graphics processor. I'm still waiting on, Intel Arc, and I really want to dive into Intel Arc on a separate stream, and we'll probably be doing that later. So that since this is all I've got for now, I think I'm going to cut it there. Only 41 minutes, so I think this is one of the shortest streams I've done recently.